Hello and welcome back to
The Mentors.
This is Vadim.
And Sergey.
And you're listening to our weekly segment called the 5-Minute Pick-Me-Up to motivate you for the week to come. This week we're traveling, and this is actually going to be a rebroadcast, a 5-minute pick-me-up rebroadcast of something that we think is actually really relevant for a lot of us as we're entering the end of the year and the new chapter of the new year, which is called creating your own daily routines. A lot of us are thinking about self-improvement in the new year. We're thinking about how to get better at whatever it is we want to get better at incrementally on a daily basis. So this week you're going to hear 3 stories from a book that we love called Daily Rituals. One is going to be about George Orwell, Albert Einstein, and Maya Angelou, and how their daily routines help them become successful. You'll notice very quickly that their routines are very, very different. So the main takeaway for this episode is you have to do what works for you.
Please enjoy this episode, and we'll see you next week.
Welcome back to The Mentors. This is Vadim.
And Sergey.
And we're back with you with another 5-minute pick-me-up. Today we wanted to talk about daily rituals and getting work done. To help people realize that you have to create your own schedule and do what works for you personally in order to accomplish the things you want to accomplish, and that there's no sort of one-size-fits-all approach to being productive. And we're inspired today by a book that we read called Daily Rituals by Mason Currey, where he chronicles the daily rituals of hundreds of writers, creators, artists, and even some entrepreneurs as well.
And we're also inspired by an article we read on Forbes just today about how one couple shifted their schedule to work from 1 p.m. to 6 p.m. and they were able to stick to that schedule. The moral of this whole episode is the fact that even though oftentimes we're made to feel guilty if we're not early risers or if we're not obsessive people who work 24/7 and don't think about anything else, or we're not full-time on our creative thing or on our business or side business, the fact of the matter is that consistency is the only thing that really matters, and you got to figure out a model that works for yourself. So a few quick stories from Daily Rituals that actually support this theory. You might have heard of a famous author named George Orwell, and actually, George Orwell, even though he already wrote a book at one point when he was in his 20s, he couldn't support himself just through his writing. So he had a teaching job, but that teaching job took way too much time. So his aunt set him up with a part-time job at a bookstore. And here's an excerpt from that story. Waking at 7, Orwell went to open the shop at 8:45 and stayed there for an hour. Then he had free time until 2. When he would return to the shop and work until 6:30. This left him almost 4.5 hours of writing time in the morning and early afternoon, which conveniently were the times that he was most mentally alert. And with his writing day behind him, he could happily yawn through the long afternoons in the shop and look forward to free time in the evening. So he found not only a part-time job when he was 31 years old as a bachelor that would support his passion, which is writing, but he figured out a schedule that worked for him, and he didn't work 15 hours a day writing. He worked 4 effective hours.
And the great part about this story is it's a great example of somebody that already started getting some success, right? He had published a book, it was doing pretty well, but as this story says, he was sort of on the margins of literary society because he couldn't really spend much time even going and networking with people, meeting with people, and creating more works of art, right? More writings. And so he had to change his schedule and essentially create a routine for himself, or an environment for himself where he could make time to do the necessary work. Another quick story, I just read an excerpt in there about Albert Einstein. You know, he would have breakfast between 9 and 10 in the morning. That was his routine. Around 10:30, he would start making his way to Princeton, where he taught for many years, ever since he emigrated to America. And basically, he was at Princeton until about 1:30 in the afternoon, so just a couple of hours doing the work that he needed, maybe office hours, maybe some of the classes that he taught. And then he would go have lunch and go home and nap. And that worked for him. He needed that nap to kind of recharge. Of course, he would then wake up after that nap and have some tea and continue his work into the evening. But that's the schedule that worked for him. We also read about Maya Angelou. You know, she had a different environment where she kept everything pristine and clean at home. And because of that, she couldn't do the writing that she did, but she needed a more messy environment for the writing. So she had a hotel room that she rented out, a really cheap hotel room that didn't have much in it, but she can kind of make as big of a mess as she needed as she wrote to organize her thoughts. And that worked for her.
And for Vadim and I, we typically work nights and weekends on our podcast. We both have other full-time commitments that we have. And so we find time to work on it whenever we can, and we enjoy it. So let's stop feeling guilty if we're not early risers, if we can't spend 80 hours a week, 100 hours a week working on a business or working on a creative pursuit. The key here is consistency, and the key here is finding what works for you so you can get the work done.
So create whatever daily rituals you need for yourself. Create whatever routines you need in the day. Let's say like meditating, talking with your wife or your kids in the morning to kind of get into that mental state. Understand yourself, right? When am I most mentally alert? When can I do this type of work? For example, when Sergey and I are contributing authors, and for me to sit down and write, let's say, an article, I need 2 or 3 hours of uninterrupted time where I have coffee next to me and I'm either in my bed near my comfortable pillow that I have set up, or let's say I'm sitting in a chair overlooking at my window near this fake fireplace that I have in my apartment. But this is the physical space I need to create for myself in order to sit there for a few hours, focus, and do writing. And so whatever you need to do for yourself to create the art, the business, whatever it is that you want to work on, make time for yourself. Understand that you don't have to follow whatever path other people created for you and guilted you into thinking you should be doing, and just focus on the consistency.
That's it for the 5-minute pick-me-up for the week. Focus on yourself and what works for you, and success will follow. We're signing off.
Cheers.
Cheers.
Have a great week.